Today we're replacing a wheel bearing in a Lexus LX470. First thing you want to do is take your lug nuts off. After you get these loose, the lug nuts, take your cover off and start jacking up your car and get you a jack stand to put underneath. Grab your 14mm socket. Sometimes you might need a breaker bar, but I already broke these loose. All right. First thing you want to do is put a little bit of PB blaster on these 17mm bolts. Makes getting them off a lot easier. Grab you a 17mm and a pull bar. Break these loose and grab yourself a regular ratchet. Start taking these off. 17mm. After removing your 17mm bolts, please put your caliper to the side with some zip ties. Make sure it's out of your way and it's not messing up any lines. Grab you a flathead and a hammer to pop this dust cover right off. Just wedge your flathead right in here and beat it with your hammer. After beating it on all the sides, you should be able to just pop it right off like so. Put PB blaster on all the cones, making sure they are lubricated, getting out when we're beating on them with the brass hammer. Next thing I want you to do is grab a brass hammer, not a steel hammer, so it does not damage these threads. So we can beat on this flange to pop these cone washers right out. Just beat it on it like so. After beating your cone washers, grab you some little pliers and just take your little cone washers out. Next thing I want you to do is grab you some C-clamp pliers. Grab right in there. Make sure you get some good grip there. Slowly remove it from the car. Make sure it don't fly. Then you can remove this piece. That'll expose your hub and axle. Grab your flathead and bend these tabs inwards so you can grab your socket and put it on this 54-inch nut. Grab yourself a giant 54-inch socket and an adapter. Take this nut off first. Take your lock washer off. Then take your second nut off. After removing both 54mm nuts and the locking washer, you are able to remove this whole piece. Be careful about your washer right here. We will be reusing this washer right here. After you remove that, your outer wheel bearing will come right out. Don't mind that leaf. What you want to do is put one of your nuts right back. As you can see, screwed it on by hand. And I want you to grab the rotor and push back. We're trying to pop the oil seal out. And what will be left on it is your nut that we just put on, your bushing, and your oil seal. And that's how you take it off. All right, now I want you to grab you a steel drift, 1/4 inside, and I want you to smack the race out of the hub. You'll have to flip this both ways to do it. Just line it up and you should have the races right out. Here they are. I'll show you why mine's cut in 1 second. What you want to do first is grab your first inner race. It's going to be your big one. Put a piece of wood right there. Gonna try to line this up evenly. After you have seated these flush with the wood, I want you to grab your old race, cut it right here, and use a bearing race and seal driver set, 81mm, and beat this in place until you hear the metal clanging. That means stop. All right, you see how The race is seated on the edges. We're going to do the same thing on the other race. Now we're going to grab our 72 millimeter, line it up with our race. We're going to beat it straight, make sure we're lined up straight, and we get it in there. When we hear that metal clang, stop. That was the clanging you were looking for. If you turn it back around, you should see that it's lined up. And we are back on the other side, making sure, and yes, we are. See right at the edge here. No gaps. No gaps. No gaps. All right, I want you to come on this side, pack this bearing. It's gonna go in like so. I want you to pack it full of grease. I want you to grab you a can of red lithium grease, and I want you to just roll it all up in all of this, everywhere. You can't have too much grease. Don't be greedy with the grease, just everywhere, all up in these rollers. And then you're gonna insert it on this side. After you do that, I want you to grab your 81 millimeter and your oil seal, the flat side up, and tap it in there so it is flush, just like so. Pack it even with grease, and do the same thing to your other bearing. After packing it full of grease, you're gonna put the smaller side in first. Make sure you go ham with the grease. Don't be afraid, don't be shy with it. Next thing I want you to do, after cleaning up your spindle, I want you to grease your spindle back up with brand new grease. I want you to put it back on the car. Be careful about the bearing on the outside, because it will fall out if you're not careful with it. I want you to stick your claw washer. In my case, the tab end is on this side, so line it up with the tab. Make sure you're all greased up. Torque this nut to 43 pounds torque, foot-pounds torque. Then back it off a little bit, spin this, go about 6, not even much, just a little turn, and then that's it. That's your setting for this one. Make sure it spins freely, like so. Get your locking washer and line it up like we did with the other washer. After putting in your lock washer, you're going to torque the second nut to 47 foot-pounds. After torquing that down, I want you to bend these lock washer tabs down with a flat head and a hammer, just like so. Clean up all your grease and get your gasket ready. Now what I want you to do is stick your flange right up to your gasket. Start putting in your cone washers, just like so. On the nuts, I want you to torque them to 24 foot-pounds, just like so. Try to go in a star pattern. Want to clean up our rotor before we put our caliper back on. C-clamp back on, put your dust cover on with your brass hammer. Then you're going to go over there, put your caliper back on, cut your zip ties off. Those are 91 foot-pounds. Put your tire back on, you're ready to roll.